Yashodanandana Praja Janarandana Yashodanandana Praja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahangsa Parivrajagacharya Satarasata Sri Śrimad His Divine Grace of Acharya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahangsa Parivrajagacharya Astatarasata Sri Śrimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda Ki Grantha Raj Śrimad Bhāgavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi All glory to some devotees. All glory to some devotees. All glory to some devotees. All glory to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Somebody can do a sound check, make sure everything's functioning. Continued reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, additional pastimes. And we're still in Boston. A visit to Boston. Late in May, Prabhupada held a public lecture at the Arlington Street Church, a well-known landmark in the heart of downtown Boston. With many respectable-looking older people, as well as young people in the audience, the meeting was well attended. Srila Prabhupada spoke on yoga as Lord Krishna explains it in the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada emphasized that Krishna chose Arjuna as the recipient of the knowledge of yoga. Why Arjuna? Arjuna, Srila Prabhupada explained, wasn't a sannyasi. He was a family man. He wasn't a scholar. And so many big scholars were present at the time. He wasn't a hatha yogi or even a brahmana. So why was he picked? Prabhupada shouted into the microphone, Bhakto si me sakacheti, because you are my devotee. Afterward, Prabhupada asked for questions. There are different levels of yoga, someone asked. So you can take any yoga and then go up further up. Step by step, you can go up. That is your option. But bhakti yoga is to take the life immediately. One who is thinking always of me within his heart and is engaged in my service with faith and devotion, he is a first-class yogi of all yogis. Yoga means to contact the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If by some process you can at once contact, that is first class. Why not try it? Try chanting Hare Krishna. Try this process. Another question. Does devotion come first and then awareness, or awareness first? Srila Prabhupada. First devotion, then awareness. If you do not labor for passing exam, how can you pass? The primary rule is to chant. Just see. We have a little faith in the beginning, a little respect. We think, let me see what is this Krishna consciousness. If we think it is nice, then we come again and associate. These boys do not accept in the beginning, but they came and advanced. For others it is hackneyed. But these boys have become purified and they have a taste. They cannot give it up. It is ecstasy. So there is gradual process of love of God. The next morning, 3 disciples of Swami Satchidananda visited Srila Prabhupada. Everybody knows what Prabhupada's nickname for Swami Satchidananda is? Swami Snatcher the Dollar. He was very famous in the Lower East Side. He had a place on 14th Street. Many devotees, ISKCON devotees, came from that place. But that was Prabhupada's Swami Snatcher the Dollar. Accompanying him on his morning walk, they asked many questions. They were young men like Prabhupada's disciples. One of them was a hairdresser named Bob. If they are already disciples of a guru, Hansarupa thought, then why are they so curious about another guru's process? Does anybody know why? Because he told them, Swami Snatcher the Dollar, that if you want to go advance more in Bhakti Yoga, you go to Bhaktivedanta Swami. So he actually sent his people who were more curious because he couldn't answer all their questions. Bob asked, don't you need to practice Hatha Yoga in order to purify the body so that eventually you can purify the higher self within? Cleanse the mind and the intelligence, Prabhupada replied, and the body is automatically cleansed. Hatha Yoga is for those in the gross bodily concept of life. In the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that a wise man doesn't place much importance on the body. The Hatha Yogi's main concentration is this body. By bodily exercise, he wants to have Krishna's love. If this were possible, all wrestlers and athletes would have achieved Krishna's love. Lord Chaitanya's program of chanting begins with the cleansing of the mind, and this takes care of cleansing the body. Another yoga student. What about sex desire? I want the spiritual, but I have such a strong desire for sex. Prabhupada. Hatha Yoga is also for controlling sex desire. If you have such desire, you are making no progress. Yoga student. How does a devotee of Krishna control sex desire? Prabhupada. Automatically. Krishna is so beautiful. We are accustomed to this habit for a very long time. Become sincere and Krishna will protect you. We'll leave some more for next time. Srila Prabhupada ki. Very clear instructions. You can see why intelligent people came to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 7, texts. I have 3 through 5. Is that correct? 3 through 5. This one is 5 through 7, but I'm 3 through 5. So I'll read from 3 and 4, and then we'll chant 5. Prajapatya Dagda Shirshno Bhavat Bhajab. We should all chant? It has to be quick though. Prajapatya Dagda Shirshno Patavajja Mukham Sira Mitrasya Chaksu Shekshaita Mitrasya Chaksu Shekshaita Bhagam Swam Bharisho Bhagaha. Next one. Pushatu Yajamanasya Pushatu yajamanasya Dadbir Jakshattu Pishtabhuk Deva Prakrita Savanga Yema Uche Shanangadu Bahubhyamashvino Pushno Bahubhyamashvino Pushno Hastabhyam Krita Bahava Bhavant Vadva Yavaschanye Bhavant Vadva Yavaschanye Bastasmashur Brigor Bhavet Bastasmashur Brigor Bhavet. Please chant. Bahubhyamashvino Pushno Hastabhyam Krita Bahava Bastasmashur Brigor Bhavet Bahubhyamashvino Pushno Bastasmashur Brigor Bhavet. Come on, guys. Bahubhyamashvino Pushno Hastabhyam Krita Bahava Bhavan Vadva Yavaschanye Bastasmashur Brigor Bhavet Bahubhyamashvino Pushno Abhyam Krita Bahava Bhavan Vadva Yavaschanye Bastasmashur Brigor Bhavet. Shri Gopal Pran. It's a little, the compound words are a little challenging, but that's the whole point, is that we have to. Prabhupada said it should be chanted at least 10 times. So far, we've only got to 4 or 5. We need more volunteers on this. Bahubhyamashvino Pushno Kastabhyam Krita Bahava Bhavant Vadva Yavaschanye Bastasmashur Brigor Bhavet Bahubhyamashvino Pushno Hastabhyam Krita Bahava Bhavant Yadva Yavaschanye Bastasmashur Brigor Bhavet Bahubhyamashvino Pushno Hastabhyam Krita Bahava Bhavant Vadva Yavaschanye Bastasmashur Brigor Bhavet. Ladies. Bahubhyamashvino Pushno Hastabhyam Krita Bahava Bhavant Vadva Yavaschanye Bastasmashur Brigor Bhavet. Anyone else? Bahubhyam with 2 arms. Ashvino of Ashvini Kumar. Pushna of Pusha, Astabhyam, with 2 hands, Kritabhava, those in need of arms, Lavantu, they will have to, Advaryava, the priests, Cha, and Anye, others, Bastasmashru, the beard of the goat, Brigu, Brigu, Bhavet, he may have. We're going to go back and read the translation 4, 3, and 4, and then 5. Lord Shiva continued, since the head of Daksha has already been burned to ashes, he will have the head of a goat. The demigod known as Bhaga will be able to see his share of sacrifice through the eyes of Mitra. Text 4. The demigod Pusha will be able to chew only through the teeth of his disciples. And if alone, he will have to satisfy himself by eating dough made from chickpea flour. But the demigods who have agreed to give me my share of the sacrifice will recover from all their injuries. Text 5. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Those who have had their arms cut off will have to work with the arms of Ashvini Kumar. And those whose hands were cut off will have to do their work with the hands of Pusha. The priest will also have to act in that manner. As for Brigu, he will have the beard from the goat's head. Purport. Shri Radha Govinda Dev Ki. Brigu Muni, a great supporter of Daksha, was awarded the beard of the goat's head, which was substituted for the head of Daksha. It appears from the exchange of Daksha's head that the modern scientific theory that the brain substance is the cause of all intelligent work is not valid. The brain substance of Daksha and that of a goat are different, but Daksha still acted like himself, even though his head was replaced by that of a goat. The conclusion is that it is the particular consciousness of an individual's soul which acts. The brain substance is only an instrument which has nothing to do with real intelligence. The real intelligence, mind, and consciousness are part of the particular individual's soul. It will be found in the verses ahead that after Daksha's head was replaced by the goat's head, he was as intelligent as he had previously been. He prayed very nicely to satisfy Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, which is not possible for a goat to do. Therefore, it is definitely concluded that the brain substance is not the center of intelligence. It is the consciousness of a particular soul that works intelligently. The whole movement of Krishna consciousness is to purify the consciousness. Doesn't matter what kind of brain one has, because if he simply transfers his consciousness from matter to Krishna, his life becomes successful. It is confirmed by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who takes up Krishna consciousness achieves the highest perfection of life, regardless of whatever abominable conditions of life he may have fallen into. Specifically, anyone in Krishna consciousness goes back to Godhead, back to home, on leaving his present material body. Om Jnana Tamandasya Ganantana Shlakaya Chakshur Muratamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Panghum Lankai Degurim Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. So this is the end result of committing offenses. We see that this must be where they get the saying, he lost his head. Sometimes when people become confused or angry, someone will say, oh, he lost his head. Because they think that the head is the seat of the intelligence. And therefore he's acting irrationally or in some way or another, not as you'd expect a person to act. But we see from this very pre-science, they say that this is, Bhāgavatam is 5,000 years old. Yeah, we have so many examples of things which people are trying to imitate even in this age. This organ transplants, face transplants, this transplant, that transplant. They're looking in so many ways to try to imitate because there's some precedent. But of course, they haven't evolved to this point yet. But ultimately, if anyone is, when I was young, we were studied in pre-med, they have you dissect different things before you work up to the cadavers. So they use, anybody know what they use? Because what's in the position, the fetal state of gestation, a pig is as close to a human as you can get without dissecting a human. So they use the pig fetus to practice on. Because everything is very similar at a certain level. And of course, this is no different here. He's just substituting. Just like we have a computer, and the computer has a processor, and that processor is considered, what do they call it? The central processing unit, just like the brain. But it doesn't have any information. It has very little limited information, right? You have your onboard RAM, whatever the chip has, and it can do certain functions. But it depends on the hard drive, which is conveniently called what? The memory, the actual storage space. So these things are all technical situations. That's not what the purport's about, but it's there, it's alluded to. And we hear that, so we can understand that. The main point is that the intelligence is not part of the brain matter. It doesn't repose there. And we understand. So what is that verse in the Gita? It says, Sarvasya chaham riddhi sani vishto matak smitir ganam apornam cha. I am seated in the heart of every living entity. And from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. We also understand that this is the real seat of the soul, not also the heart that we're considering, not that beating pump. But everything is there considered because we identify the heart with our emotional content and how it's affecting us in so many ways. But it's not, it's the spirit soul itself, which is located in that vicinity, right? That we understand that that is the real brain, the real intelligence, the real self. Right? So the yogis are also trying to approach it. They know that this brain is not the actual cause of self-realization. And that we see that in every aspect of yoga, it's described that one should meditate on Paramatma, who is where? Situated in the heart. They don't say it's situated in the brain. So this heart region is the actual center of the self. But it's not, because we've also seen that a person, when he gets a heart transplant, he doesn't change his identity. Somebody asked Prabhu about that, and Prabhu said no. It's because the brain is not the center. And so what we're doing here is regarding yoga is we're purifying the heart. We're purifying the spiritual self. So it's described that that the spirit soul at the time of death is changing, is transmigrating. And so if he's transmigrating, then where is the intelligence? It says that the intelligence is carried by the subtle body. And what does the subtle body consist of? The mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. And all of these things are carried into another body. So another body, another heart, another brain. But it is the subtle aspect that is the real, or at least in the material world, is the actual living entity. And we also have experience in the dreaming state. And when we're dreaming, we're not in our material bodies. Sometimes they have these elaborate descriptions of astral projection. Everyone knows what astral projection is, right? Anybody not know? And so the body is, the subtle body is traveling. It's not, it has a very thin connection. And you have to take great care for that connection. They have people who actually try to monitor the situation. They put you through these various levels of induced astral states using drugs. Not a very safe thing. But it's been done. The American Indians did it with peyote and mescaline. It was part of their religious activities. And they did it so that and they also do it in other Aboriginal states. You know, where they go and they have these visions. And these things happen because the subtle body can leave. And then ultimately what happens if you extend too far and you break that connection, you get separated from your existing physical self. This is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. This is what happens to people who take too many drugs. And we've seen it. Anyone who survived the 60s would see that somebody took a trip, and then that person, that consciousness, that living entity, he didn't come back to that body. But someone else came back to that body. And that's what happens if there's various specters. It's interesting how these terms all relate to that subtle platform, spectral. And so they call it ghost specters. So sometimes a ghost will try to inhabit those who are too much engaged in intoxication because they have a very weak connection. And so a ghost can go in, and then you become the ghost. So there's many instances of this happening. If you read the various Puranas, you understand, like, what is the most powerful ghost? The Brahma Rakshasa. So there's different types of entities that are looking to take advantage of this situation. So in this case, we can see how what can you say, transplantation of the head of a goat onto the body of a human was successfully performed even 5,000 years ago, just to complete the situation. He just needed that because the brain functions as a sort of a control center, right? Because it's having the senses, right? What does it say? The 6 senses, which include the mind. Right? So these gross senses have that connection to the material body. But the spiritual senses don't. And at the time of death, we take our subtle body with our subtle senses, and we go to another body. From boyhood to youth to old age, similarly at death, spirit soul changes. But the self-realized person, he's not bewildered by that change. And so we get this opportunity, and that's one of the things that we develop because it is not just a matter of faith. This faith is based on the complete study of that science which has been locked up in Sanskrit for thousands and thousands of years. This is only for insight here. This is the important thing. So we don't want to become distracted by the body, and so or the senses. And so this is why we concentrate. This is our whole purpose. We have the process of purification is not simply just the external process. One is cleansing his body, but the more important point is to cleanse one's mind. And this is emphasized everywhere. We see that the yogis, they're in the Himalayas, they're not taking any care of their body. Now we've just seen the Kumbh Mela, and we see that all the these Babajis come out of their caves every 12 years or every whenever. And they descend to take their bath at the Prayagraj. And they have no concern whatsoever for their body. They're completely detached. They come out and what? They haven't cut their hair, they haven't cut their nails. They're just completely devoid of any sense of, how can you say, false ego in this regard. Totally neglected. But they still haven't progressed to the point where they understand what is the purpose of these yoga activities, the purpose of this detachment. This Vidya Vairagya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Vidya, that if you're not getting the benefit, then this is what Prabhu was telling these yoga students. They're just preoccupied with the externals. People want to go to yoga class, they want to learn some various postures. It's no different from this, from going to a martial arts class and learning your kata or your forms. It's all the same thing. It's all connected to this misconception that I am the body. So we're not this body. And the more we engage in these things like hatha yoga or martial arts things, it just reinforces this bodily concept of life. And it becomes more difficult to detach oneself. So one has to engage in activities which purposely are focused on understanding that I am not this body. And so that is the purpose of Bhakti Yoga. From the very beginning, the very first instruction, that I am not this body. Aham Brahmasmi, that famous epithet. And this aphorism defines our study of the Shastra. Aham Brahmasmi means I am spirit soul. I am spirit, I am not matter. Otherwise, what is the point? This body has a beginning and an end. And so one has to take the time in between to study what happens to the soul, what happens to the consciousness. If the soul is eternal, why am I in this body in the first place? This has always been the great question. Who am I? Who is God, and what is the purpose of life? But only the Bhagavad Gita has the complete information regarding this. And the Bhāgavatam, if one has progressed to that point, he gets there. That's the undergraduate study. We have the beginning, we have the undergraduate, the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, and we have the postgraduate Chaitanya Charitamrita. And everything is there complete. And that's the benefit of what we see as the Evam Parampara Praptim Imam Rajasya Viduru. That we've received this knowledge in an unbroken chain. You cannot point to any other source of knowledge that has been preserved intact over the course of millennia. There's always been an interruption. And even Krishna alluded to Arjuna that this science, as it is, appears to have been lost due to various different things. And therefore, he's again speaking it to Arjuna. And so we have to find out what is the main thing. And Prabhupada is giving us this in the Leelamrita. He's not trying to give them so many words to try to convince them intellectually and philosophically. He just wants them to get the essence. And the essence is that yoga is meant to understand God. It's not meant for your bodily functions. And the questions they're asking regarding sex is because they haven't been able to, what's that verse? Rasavajam risopyasya param jasva nivartate. Vishaya vinivartante. So these senses, Vishaya vinivartante, they're meant to be used in Krishna's service for purification. And when one does so, he develops a higher taste. How is it that everybody who comes to Krishna consciousness, very quickly he's able to give up meat eating, intoxication, and with a little difficulty illicit sex, and then gambling. Gambling is nothing. Somebody's at the door, just in case we want to open it. And so it's very telling how that yoga student, they can go up to a certain point, but because they didn't have a higher taste. So therefore, Swami Snatchadadala told him, go see Bhaktivedanta Swami. Because he can't answer those questions. What is the higher taste? Atak pumbir dvija shrestha varnashama vibhagasa sunustatasya dharmasya sangsiddhya haritoshanam. Is that if you don't know the science how to please God, how to please Krishna, then you cannot get that taste. Ultimately, all religion is about this taste. So many religions are there, but you see all the time, and it happens here as well, for those who have not become steady on the platform, they get to a certain point and then again they fall down. And that term is very popular. When somebody has a problem, what happens? He leaves, he fell down. Fell down from what? Fell down from the roof? Fell down from a skyscraper? No, he fell down from the level of consciousness that was keeping him on that high platform. Because everything has to do with the consciousness. Has to be maintained. Just like you maintain anything. We're maintaining our consciousness daily by what? By chanting our 16 rounds. This process of purification cannot be stopped. If you stop, what happens? If you shut up the switch to a fan, what happens? It immediately starts to wind down, and eventually it stops. And this analogy was used previously. We said, it happens. Someone is neglectful of his sadhana, someone is neglectful of chanting, they can continue for some time externally, performing the mechanical movements or ritualistic functions. But because they have no taste, because they're losing their taste, eventually they will have to leave. It's just natural. It happens all the time. If you lose enthusiasm for anything, doesn't matter if it's your material job or your spiritual job, you lose your enthusiasm, which is connected directly to the purification. Utsahan nishtayat daryat. First ingredient is enthusiasm. Someone is not enthusiastic, that's an indication that his taste is not fully developed. If he doesn't have patience, if he doesn't have tolerance, very difficult to progress. So all these things are meant for us not to learn how to transplant the head of a goat onto the head of a human. We're not here to learn transhumanism. People are desperate now because they have no understanding. They think, I'm not happy in this body, so I want to convert my body. And the whole medical industry, based on this transgenderism. This is the height of illusion. It's indicative of the fallen state of the material world. That people have no idea. They don't know who they are, and they think I can change it by changing the body. This is a very unfortunate situation, and where we have the opportunity, of course, by distributing Prabhupada's books, by distributing pure knowledge, to save these people. They're so confused. We're not these bodies. We're the spirit soul. This is the platform of satisfaction. This is the platform of realization. And it is up to us to somehow or other get a book to every single person, as many as possible. And for that, we have a whole warehouse full of books. And we have to make sure, and every morning we're reading, preaching is the essence. All right, so what we're reading here, the connection, our only connection, is how to give us the necessary inspiration to go and distribute Prabhupada's books, because we see what happens in the absence of knowledge. What happens? Moga samoga karmana, moga jnana vicetasa. Because he's stealing even these poor students of the Integral Yoga Society. They don't understand why they've paid their fees. They've submitted to hearing those lectures. They went through all their things. But finally, out of frustration, he told him, go see Bhaktivedanta Swami. So this is, everyone recognized Srila Prabhupada. You know, whether they said it out loud or not. But the case, and we had, like I said, we had many students who came from them. Not just these students, I mean, who joined and who became lifelong devotees serving Srila Prabhupada. Of course, that was a long time ago. Many are no longer here. But they served faithfully for decades. You know, because that was, they found the higher taste. They found the higher taste. So this is, if you're not that we want to emphasize this point, that everyone has to perform some self-assessment, and he has to understand, he has to examine, do I have this higher taste? You know, am I still enamored by the superficial aspect, you know, of this? And some people think, no, I'm not really. But yeah, the 60s were better, the 70s were better, the 80s were better, and people say they can't break that connection. Right, Vishnu John Maharaj, right, and the height of the hippie counterculture, you know, and at that time San Francisco was considered to be the capital, you know, of the flower revolution. And all the big bands were coming from that area. And there's a whole group of devotees that joined. They were able to separate themselves by the power of the Maha Mantra and Prasadam. And Vishnu John Maharaj, when he would give class, very famous classes on nectar devotion. Unfortunately, we don't have those recordings because devotees didn't record themselves. Only Prabhupada recorded his classes. But he had one point that stood out because at that time, this was part of our attachment. We were all attached to that rock and roll. Right? Not just rock and roll, everything that was part of it. It was a package. What was that package? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That was the package. And so Vishnu John Maharaj, he was able to show us how very clearly. He called this interference with our progress in spiritual life impure reminiscence. But one is constantly going back for whatever reason and hearing those things which previously brought him some sense of enjoyment. All right, so, and just by naming it that, impure reminiscence, because we have so many memories, but what is the use of those memories? Well, we've had an opportunity to build up so many memories. Those who are fortunate, we had Prabhupada's association, so many memories associated with Srila Prabhupada. It was so easy to substitute, but still, the siren call of those forgotten periods, and they're gone. You have to go into the Wayback Machine, they call it, and you have to search for those things. You know, and all those things are still available. So you can be in Maya in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s. All you gotta do is press a button, and there it is. There's the Beatles, there's whoever you want. And you can zone out and just, what? Fill your head again with impure reminiscence. It's that much well. Just like if you take the elephants bathing. Nice analogy Prabhupada uses. And we don't have much experience of that, but if you've been to India, if you've been to any, place where the elephants, they go and they take a very nice bath. They're very thorough. And immediately as soon as they come out, they roll in the dirt. They just completely roll in the dust. And of course, there's a reason for it. That's their armor against invasive insects that hide in their crevasses of their hide. What is that? Is that a crevice or a crevasse? Well, Ram Roy would tell me. I just wait and have to look. And anyway, the folds of their skin. And so the thing is, there's elephants bathing. This is what we're doing. You're trying to become pure, and at the same time, you're putting dirt all over yourself. So don't do that. Don't let Maya tempt you. You have to pass it, just like it happens. In the material world, back in the day, 42nd Street, we used to do Harinam there. 42nd Street was considered to be the most degraded part of not just New York City, practically. It was synonymous with degradation for the entire world, in one sense. Everywhere you went was just all, and Prabhupada used to refer to it, topless, bottomless. He would say, topless, bottomless. Everywhere is advertised, topless, bottomless. Triple X, this, that, the other thing. Yeah, very, very prominent. So it's very easy. But we would do, and the devotees would come. We used to have a panel van. It was the everything van. It was our boga run, trash run, everything van. And on Friday and Saturday nights, it was our Harinam van. Big enough van. So after the trash run of the boat, we would clean it thoroughly, get it ready. And all the devotees would pile into this van. And we would have Gora Arti in the van on the way to 42nd Street. And Agni Dev would lead, or one of the devotees, most ecstatic kirtan, or Jai Satchidananda. And we're talking men and women in this enclosed space going to distribute the holy name in the most sinful place in New York City. And we would drive up to 1 Times Square, which is where the building is that has the LED marquee that goes around. And it was a big plaza. And the van would stop there, and the doors would open, and 30 devotees would pile out of this van. Instantly, on the scene, all at once. And of course, the karmis couldn't believe it. And immediately we would form 2 lines and start chanting the holy name. And that was, and then of course we would do street theater, guerrilla street theater, Lohitak, Sarasagya, Lokamangala, all the devotees. And so this is how you defeat impure reminiscence. You have to have, so Prabhupada used to tell, and this is how he saved us. He told Achyutananda that kirtan is the safest platform. So New York was famous for the kirtan. Still, now it's as famous. Maybe we could get a little bit more. Ram Roy's making it happen. But we had the best kirtan leaders in the entire movement. And so the golden avatar of those days was cassettes. New York kirtans, so many cassettes, New York kirtans, ecstatic kirtans. And so this kirtan is the safest platform. You have to find that where you feel the safest, and you just stay there, or you go there whenever Maya starts to attract you. You pop in that, because it's not a cassette anymore. You go to YouTube, and there's so many. You have, you can even get these old, there was one, I forget where it was, we found it, but they had a website of all the old ISKCON records, the ones that we used to publish. And ecstatic kirtans. And you just put them on, and while you're doing your service, while you're cleaning, while you're doing whatever, you just listen to them, instead of getting distracted by anything else. So everything can be used as a tool to remember Krishna, but you have to have the determination to avoid the impure reminiscence. So this, it happens. Sometimes it's difficult to pull away, So, I remember that song. It was such a good song. And then you get lost for, it's a time waster. Another thing. But this is our condition, that until we're completely purified, that attraction will be there. And so the association devotees, being in the temple, being in the association devotees, this is where, if kirtan is the safest platform, then the temple is the safest environment because it has everything. The kirtan is there, the prasadam is there, the deities are there. Everything is there. So this is the safest place. And whether you're coming here just for a visit for a few hours or whether you're coming to live, that shelter will protect you for the amount of time that you want to engage yourself. And then eventually Prabhupada made the point that he wanted people to come and experience it. If you feel safe for 1 or 2 hours, then just imagine how you'd feel if you were living with the devotees. How safe you'd be. Like a fortress. Right, we're reading in Krishna book how, these various personalities are trying to attack Krishna and creating disturbances, Jarasandha and whatnot, and there's Kaliyava and all these different people. And so Krishna constructed the fortress at Dwarka to protect the inhabitants. So Prabhupada has given us so many forts in the form of these temples. And Krishna is there, just as he was in Dwarka. And he's giving us all the protection we want, but we have to be his servants. And that attitude has to be developed. And we're hearing, and the more we're hearing, of course, the more we're becoming purified, so that simple realization can take place. Because once I transfer my identity so that I'm a servant of Krishna, then my future is secure. Prabhupada said, they go back to Godhead. That was his point. Anyone who takes up Krishna consciousness achieves the highest perfection of life, regardless of whatever abominable condition of life he may have fallen into. Specifically, anyone in Krishna consciousness goes back to Godhead, back to home, on leaving his present material body. What does that have to do with Daksha losing his head? It has to do with Prabhupada relating it to the brain substance, again, which is not a material thing. And that we're not dependent on this so-called material brain, but we are dependent on elevating ourselves to the mode of goodness, which is happening automatically in the temple by refraining from the 4 pillars of sinful life. Right? And anyone who does it automatically gets that realization. But it's very difficult. People can't. Meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling. As soon as you stop those things, your consciousness becomes purified to the point where you can understand how I am not this body. Right? Your intelligence is now in charge. Because it takes your intelligence to stop those things, not the mind. The mind is encouraging you. But now when you understand the difference between the mind and the intelligence, and you exercise the intelligence, that is the first step. You've exercised mind control, real mind control, without hatha yoga, without trying to control the senses to achieve this. You've achieved controlling the mind simply by stopping those things which the mind subsists on. The feeding the senses. So if you withdraw the sense, this is what yoga ultimately is all about. These people are trying to withdraw the senses. They're trying to control the senses. But we're doing it automatically by stopping the 4 pillars of sinful life. And then Tadarajas tamo bhavo kama lobhadhyasche cheta ete anabhidam stitvam sattvam prasidate. One becomes steady. He rises through the modes of material nature. You've taught these yoga students, what do they know about the modes of material nature? And if you don't understand the modes of material nature, how can you overcome them. Goodness, passion, and ignorance. Right? So everyone knows what is ignorance. You look, we say it all the time. People very quickly say, oh, that's ignorance. They don't even know about the other modes, so to speak. But they are very familiar with the mode of ignorance. And they can see it clearly in others. But what they don't see is they don't see the mode of passion. Oh, they can. They even say this fellow is very passionate about his work. But how many people do you know say, oh, he's in a mode of goodness? But they don't know what it is. That's because there's not much of it, right? Well, actually, you see that when people go to the country, they become enamored. They see the peaceful tranquility of the sunrise and sunset in a virgin forest, or in the mountains, or the clear springs that are coming spontaneously in the middle of the wilderness. They automatically associate that with something different. Not passion, it's not there. And they're attracted to it because it's pure. It's unadulterated. Not spoiled by man, by passion and ignorance. And so, who was it that said that? Was that Whitman or was that Yeats? That the cities are, who? Culpeper, that guy Culpeper, that the cities are man and the country is God, or something to that extent. So this is, we do understand, if we examine our own reaction to these things, how we react to the mode of ignorance, and how we react to the mode of goodness. And our reaction to the mode of goodness is that we should try to, as much as possible, cultivate it. And when you cultivate something, you maintain it. Just like when you have a plant, you nurture it, you take care of it, you want to see it grow nicely. And so we want to cultivate the mode of goodness. And to do that, we have to avoid the mode of passion and ignorance. So those activities which we formerly associated with in our previous lives. You know, that's no longer us. We can't identify with it. You know, now it's the time of coming up to the various religions. They have Lent, they have Ramadan, and what are these things are meant to become opportunities to purify oneself, right? You give up whatever, your favorite thing, or you give up eating during the day. But what is the purpose? I mean, the purpose obviously is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if you're doing it for 1 month out of 12, and then all the rest of that time you're doing all nonsense, what is the point? That's that elephant's bathing thing. So they don't know, they don't make the connection that I'm supposed to be doing this all the time. I'm supposed to be following Dharmam to Sakshat Bhagavana Pranitam. God has all the laws. Everything is being controlled by God. So I should be following His laws all the time, not just 1 month, 1 day. But they don't know. And so, therefore, they don't get the real benefit. And you can see how that, yes, there's some faith there. But it's only faith on the platform for which they relate to their material activities. So that's why material religions can't liberate you, right? Because the material nature, the 3 modes of nature compared to ropes, one is bound very tightly. So it doesn't matter if somebody's feeding you. So your hands are just like, who was that? Had to be the priest, hands of Pusha. Those whose hands were cut off will have to do their work with the hands of Pusha. And then there's the guy who lost his teeth, and his disciples have to feed him. So we're bound up in the material world, we're being fed. We're not being unbound, but somehow or other we're being sustained. But we're being sustained by all the wrong things. We're being fed. All of our senses are being bombarded by the media, social media, this media, that media. And so we're not becoming free. It takes someone who is no longer connected to those things to release you from your bonds. All right, samsara dhavanala lita loka. We chant this prayer every day. Very nice analogy. The spiritual master, samsara. So, very important word in Sanskrit. People hear it, but they don't fully understand it. Samsara means a cycle of birth and death. And so if there's a cycle of birth and death, then there must be a way to break that cycle. And so if one is bound up by the modes of material nature, someone who is not bound up, he can free that person. So therefore, that's why the spiritual master is given such respect and reverence. Because the self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. He's no longer bound up by the modes of material nature. Daiviyesha gunamayi mamamaya dharatya. All right? It's very difficult to overcome, but one who is surrendered, he can easily overcome it. And we see that. We've all experienced it, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But the point of maintenance is important. And Prabhupada is stressing that one has to engage, he has to be active. Cannot just be in his own mind thinking that, this is what I'm doing, this is equivalent to satisfying the spiritual master. No. One has to very carefully understand what is the order of the spiritual master. And we know practically right off the bat, chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 regular principles, and engage oneself 24/7 in service. Somehow or other. One has to think. It's like, because any free moment, you see, the mind is wandering. So the safest thing is to just continue to be engaged, whether it's physically or mentally. Mentally, we're always, how difficult is it to turn on a lecture, to hear transcendental Shabda Brahma, the transcendental sound vibration? Not difficult at all. If I'm doing my laundry, I just have to turn on a lecture and listen. I don't have to hear anything, my impure reminiscence. I can hear Prabhupada, I can hear Vishnu John Maharaj, I can hear Chutananda, I can all the New York kirtans. So beautiful. Immediately takes you back to a safe place. I remember that kirtan, I remember that time. I remember 42nd Street, I remember us chanting in the truck. So many good memories. You need to use those and cultivate them. So you can get away from this impure reminiscence. All my time spent with my spiritual master. What is the benefit if in the absence then you forget everything? It's actually extremely disrespectful. So we have to just concentrate. We don't want to lose our head like Daksha, become offensive. This is the whole story here. We're finally getting the realization. It's not about having a goat's head or having the beard of a goat. But the essence is there analogously. And Prabhupada, in self-realization, many things are presented to us in a manner so that we can understand. It's like Dehinos Minyata Dehe, from boyhood to youth to old age. The soul is passing through all those transitions. And so it's only logical that he's going to transition again at death. Why? Because the soul is eternal. For the soul is never birth nor death, nor having once been does he ever cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, undying, ever existing, and primeval. And he is not slain when the body is slain. So the intelligent man asks, so what happens at the time of death? Where does the soul go? But this is the intelligence. This is where Prabhupada is giving us, bring us to that level of intelligence. And of course we know, goes back home, Tyaktva deham purna janma nayati mamiti. Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yovetit. One who knows the nature of my appearance, the transcendental nature of my appearance and disappearance. He never takes birth again. Why? Because then we know that there's something else. It's like if I know how to get around, like if you want to know every single subway stop in the city, you go to Ram Roy Prabhu, and he'll tell you how to get there. So the spiritual master, he knows exactly what has to be, what to do, what not to do. And he can tell you every step of the way. Go here, do this. It is not up to chance. Everything is chalked out. But we have to be willing to follow. You know, if we don't want to listen, say, no, I want to go my own way. I'm not going to take those directions. And what happens? You get lost. It's inevitable. All right? It's a joke in the material world that what? Men never ask for directions. Doesn't matter how lost they get, they don't ask for directions. So we have to counter that tendency by learning to surrender to the ultimate authority. That's because men were rebellious by nature. So you have to use that rebellious nature to find the correct authority, and then surrender, and then follow, and take those instructions to heart. Go back home, back to Godhead. Any questions or comments? Mr. Ram Roy. And maybe that person at the door has a question too. It's on.
Dasarath Sutta compiled a 154-page booklet called Vishnu Jan Swami Nectar, and I just located it, and I sent you the PDF, 154-page PDF, and I don't know how he
we used
collected.
We used to have books, so he must have got one.
Okay, yes, that's what he did. So, like, as many of those lectures transcribed, and everything he could possibly find on Vishnu Jan Swami.
Nectar devotion. Those classes were nectar. So, impure reminiscence. You should do a text search. You know, in PDF, you do the Control F5, and then just find that impure reminiscence. Such a nice thing. Anyone wants to know? There's so much nectar. And if you're looking, just like the honeybee, if you're looking for nectar, be the honeybee. Don't be the fly. The fly is looking for all the nonsense things. There was one time we were in India, and Urjasvat Prabhu, who's no longer with us, we were just walking and we were just discussing. Because when you're in Vrindavan, all topics center around Krishna or things to do with Krishna. But there's so many instructions just by being in India. You have the stool-eating hogs. You don't have those in America. Stool-eating hogs. Or stool-eating dogs, camels, or the asses getting kicked in the face when you're approaching the female ass for sex life. All these things come to life. The overburdened donkeys loaded down with the washerman's laundry, you know, simply to get a handful of grass. Why is he laboring so hard? So these are all analogies there. And then the crows inhabiting a filthy place. We were walking along, and someone in front of us cleared his throat and spit on the ground. As soon as he did that, real nasty, you know, they used to call them lungies when we were kids, just came out. This crow came out of nowhere and just immediately swooped down without even stopping letting it. It just scooped up that delectable mucus. So this is the analogy. Don't be a crow. Don't go looking for the disgusting remnants, you know, of things like that. But India is filled with instructions like this. filled. They have the cow circumambulating. Everybody knows the word grahasta, where it comes from. The griha is a stake in the ground that they pound into the ground, and a rope is attached to it, connected to the animal. And then the animal circumambulates that griha, either to, that's how they make limestone. They slake lime, and the animal just keeps pounding it. Or they have a grist wheel, and he grinds the grains. Or they have it connected to a water lift, and he's lifting the water. But basically, this animal is going around this griha for hours, connected by that rope. So the grahasta is similarly attached to his family by this stake and the rope, and he has to perform this circumambulation to survive. He has to perform his activities. So that, and you see it all the time in India. Animals circumambulating the griha, the stake in the ground. Any questions? Dr. Connor, any questions? No? Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Sri Radha Govinda Dev ki.
You can send a copy to